The Seahawks traveled south and brought the cold winter Pacific Northwest weather with them down to Carolina. And on a damp, chilled day, on a day when the footing was unsure and the hands were slippery when wet, and it was wet constantly, the Seattle Seahawks were able to yet still come away with a comfortable win, 27-10, in a season with a lot of comfortable wins, remaining the road warriors that they have been throughout, even going back to last year. The Seattle Seahawks offense continued their recent trend of painfully slow starts, while the defense continued their overall season-long trend of being fairly dominant in their effort and play throughout, and especially able to take down these young quarterbacks still learning the ropes. It was a defensive performance that we've seen the likes of which many times before this season, and even at times last year under Mike McDonald. Collective as a whole, really keeping the whole group going rather than it being about a string of stars. A defense that can single-handedly on any given week go and take down an offense as a whole from start to finish. And today, that was the story of this game. You gave this Panther offense no chance. Bryce, 54 yards passing today. Mr. Young, the number 1 overall pick, a guy that was touted as Patrick Mahomes, minus 3 inches. There's going to be plenty of room for him to grow in his game, and you're going to expect some of the inconsistency, and you're going to expect a kind of tough day at the office like this against a Mike McDonald defense, which has many designs on feasting on these quarterbacks that don't know all the ins and outs. That being said, this Seattle Seahawks defense really took it to him on a confusion standpoint. They stopped the run as they have throughout this year, keeping them under 4 yards an attempt. And this is a Panther rushing attack then getting after you. And as you've got a guy in Bryce Young on the day who's going throughout struggling, averaging only 2.3 yards per attempt, he's then going to try to use his legs as a fallback plan. And the Seattle Seahawks defense took that away throughout. 9 carries, only 27 yards for him, keeping them under 4 yards a carry, not letting them easy out there. Also not allowing Bryce, who will tend to try to at times really eye manipulate a defense down the field and get you to really drop and sink with depth into your zone drops, which has been a commonality of an issue at slight times with this Seattle Seahawks defense. And then he'll just always be intending to go and hit that flat route. He was doing a lot of that today to the Hawks defense, really sinking back and trying to get them to sink back in zones. And it would seem Seattle was maybe playing a little bit more man today than they were playing zone in recent weeks, and maybe catching the Panthers off guard because of it. But you always seemingly had a guy ready to be on the spot and pick up that running back coming out of the flat or a throw underneath. The Seattle Seahawks rallied up in space really well and did an outstanding job of tackling on the day as a whole. A big key and difference in this game is how the Seattle Seahawks offense was able to convert on third downs versus the Panthers in this game, who were, I think, 1 of 11 on the day in converting their third down attempts. And that's in big part because you're able to keep it in 3rd and long rather than 3rd and short. As we've seen at times this Hawks defense, if they can do that, they can get you into those spots. They've really then got you in the bind. If they can get that good hard work done on the 1st and 2nd down, they're going to make life very hard on converting those 3rd and very, very long. And that was the case today with the Panthers. Also a very good job done on being able to take away Tataroa McMillan, only 1 catch for 5 yards on the day. This guy's been at times kind of a centerpiece of this passing offense, and yet you never made it feel like he was open. I think, again, going back to the footing and how this also probably affected some of the Seattle Seahawks receivers on the other side of it, where you can't make those precise cuts as much as you can when the footing is better, certainly affected this type of stuff. And this is where we're going to start to head into kind of playoff football, where the game kind of can change a little bit, and the way that you played the game in September is not going to be the way that you're going to play the game when we get into January. But you were able to do a little bit more from your receiving core than they were when you've only got 64 yards given up in the air. And I looked at, historically speaking, it would seem back in 1979, the Seahawks defense at one point only had a game where they gave up collectively -7 yards in the air in that given game. So there has been one game, technically speaking, in Hawk history, which was better. But for the modern era, to keep a passing attack under control like you did today, under 100 yards, where it seems like you can fall out of bed and find yourself 100 yards passing as a quarterback in this sport. Very impressive. It's hard to really pinpoint a lot of the stars across the board. DeMarcus Lawrence gave you another revelatory type performance, another renaissance kind of performance for him, where it's all across the board in what he's giving you. It's the tackle numbers are great. He's like 6 tackles in this game. He's getting you quarterback hits. He's getting you pressure. He's going to go get you a late sack in this game when the game's on the line. And boy, you could really use a sack right now. If one of the edges could just give that to you, he's able to do that there. And he came in at a point in time in this game, which was so key, where after an interception and really everything was just kind of feeling, not necessarily from a doom perspective, offensively speaking, but it wasn't bright. And then he comes in there and brings a Peanut Tillman punch to knock the ball out, put the offense back on a short field, and really then kickstart that momentum, kind of like we saw last week with the Rashid Shaheed kick return. And the offense was really able to take flight from there. But again, with the hustle with him, like I've noted with Leonard Williams in these kind of wrap-up videos before. The hustle you get from this guy at 33 years old, who's been so many years in this league, the fight, the desire, the play in and play out, what he gives you is so impressive. Not to mention, he's been the best edge on this team throughout the course of this season. Other guys you got to give a shout out to, Uchenna Nwosu played a solid game. Julian Love came back after that fumble, and then after the Hawks got a touchdown, and then came back and was able to go get you an interception. Another timely point in this game to keep that momentum shifting back in your direction so that you could quickly become explosive offensively there from a scoreboard standpoint, because at least that is what the offense will give you on these days where it is a little bit feeling more famine-ish throughout the course of the day, that when they get to the feast side of it, that it's an explosive feast at that. They're piling up the plate, if you were. Defensively, aside from that, I think the secondary as a whole, you give a big old tip of the cap to. Don't know who you can pinpoint exactly as far as cornerback above another before looking at the all-22, because there just wasn't a lot of passing attempts down the field. There was a lot of check down cities. There was a lot of tight coverage whenever you did see completions. There were certainly no big plays over the top. Only 8 yards was the longest reception you gave up on the day. So an outstanding performance by this defense. They held up the offense in that first half. It felt a little bit like that Atlanta Falcon game where they had to really hold a tough line, where it's like, our offense is going to have some of those bad drives and those 3 and outs. And what are you doing offensively? And come on, defense, hold us again. Come on, defense, make it stand again. But the offense picked up the defense last week. This is the ebb and flow of football seasons. And when it does come to the offense, I think that there's a lot baked within this, and it's not all bad. It is the frustrating start. It is the slow start. It is still the turnover problem, which is pervasive here. There were some other things that cropped up in this game, partly affected by the weather. For instance, Cooper Kupp, normally very sure-handed, had 2 drops in this game, which were very key drops in this game, including a touchdown catch that was right there in his hands. It seemed like just getting the ball again, keeping the ball in your hands. Kenneth Walker caught one and then kind of fumbled out of his hands. It was affecting both sides. It's kind of just the nature of how the weather was, where just the air felt like it was a little bit wet out there in general. Not as much of that it was raining a lot, but just that the air was damp. Sam Darnold was fine. I'm not going to address the performance past that. He got the job done, got you the win. Some of this is that you got the passing attempts limited down to only 27 in this game, so there's only so much work to be done within that, especially considering that there's probably about 3 drops there on the books for the 18 completions he had in this football game. Got enough to get the job done. The turnovers are not good, and they're certainly going to be problematic for some Seahawks fans out there who feel fairly convinced that this is going to be an issue that's going to raise its ugly head up in the playoff game when we most least need it to happen. I'm not as sure as this is going to occur. There's a lot of reasons for this stuff popping up. I think we've got to acknowledge that certainly with Sam, there might be a little bit more of an uptick if you're going to have him as your starting quarterback on the turnover front. I think with getting some of the supporting cast improved at times, there were some pretty clean rushes, as we've seen it a few times this week, in pass protection breakdowns that we saw in this game that led to some of that. The tip passes, though, are another part of this. And the tip passes do come in part from a little bit of the windup that you're going to get with Sam. Somebody was saying in my live stream that he's got to learn to pump fake a time or two, because that could really throw these defenses off, because the second they see that windup start, they're already leaping up in the air like they're getting ready to get an alley-oop. But that's a part of the game that you're going to get with him at this point. Still, the resiliency comes back into play in this game, and when they do find their footing and when he does find his rhythm, this offense is able to execute, and he's able to make some really grade A plays around that, including the toughness factor. And a lot of different throws in this game where those pass protection breakdowns broke down, and he's got a guy right there in his face slamming right into his grill as hard as he can, and he's got to deliver that ball right there on time to get it to the right spot, and he was able to do so. He's got a lot of toughness. He's remained upright despite taking these hits. I think Kubiak's done a good job of keeping the offense balanced in order so that he doesn't have to be high volume and take too many of these hits over the course of the season, but it's an underrated part of his game that Sam doesn't get a lot of credit for. Still, you need to get a better, faster start offensively in these first halves, especially, and that recent trend doesn't make a lot of sense, as Kubiak and both Darnold working together this long in this offense with these parts and pieces should be getting better. With a Rashid Shaheed, you think should be getting better and more consistent, and it's not quite gotten there as far as the passing attack has gone. Jackson Smith-Njigba remained his steady self as he has throughout the course of this year. Cooper Kupp had a couple of other really strong catches around a few of those drops, and Rashid Shaheed got knocked out of this game when he got his head slammed down into the turf on a concussion, and so he wasn't able to bring as much impact into this game, leaning back onto Bobo and Drake Young to come in there and kind of fill in. A huge shout out to AJ Barner as well, as he's capping off a very strong second-year campaign with now 50 catches on the season. Only got 3 targets in this game, but made 3 receptions on the back of it. And on a few of those catches, he had to do some run after the catch, which was so very important on those plays, be it to go get the first down or to go get himself another touchdown. The good news is that though the passing offense struggled, the rushing offense did not. 36 carries, 163 yards, 4.5 yard per carry average, 2 touchdown runs that were busted in at the goal lines. That's when the defense knows you want to run it. They're going to load up to stop that run, and yet you're still able to run it. One of those clear distinguishing marks of a team that's maybe starting to kind of improve in their ability to run the football. As you look through the back half of the schedule, yes, the slow starts offensively have been consistent and pervasive and worrying, but at the same point in time, you've also seen the rushing attack come forward through the back half of the schedule, as you also had hoped to expect with this very detail-driven type of rushing scheme that should allow these players to need a little bit more time to learn all the ins and outs, but then once they do, they got some tricks in their bag in order to get their blocks laid, in order to allow this rushing attack to find more consistent success. On this day, when you look at this offense, many more runs in this day than you've seen throughout this year of the 3 yards and more, 3 yards and more. Much more fewer of those negative plays, especially when you're not trying to run silly fly sweeps to Kenneth Walker when just getting downhill is working. But when you were getting downhill, you were making a lot of different headway across the board on this. It was mainly working the outside runs as a whole out there. Zach Charbonnet with maybe his strongest day as a pro, 18 carries, 110 yards, 6 yards a carry, and then he did have those 2 rushing touchdowns. And what was really cool about him today is with him, he sometimes becomes the opposite of what you with Walker was. Maybe with Walker, you get a little bit too much of trying to pick his way through traffic, pick his way to find his hole, taking a little bit too long to get there behind the line of scrimmage. With Charbonnet, maybe it's a little bit too much of getting downhill a little bit too fast, rather than taking a beat, measuring it up, and then seeing if there's maybe a bit of a cutback lane there. Felt like he really did take the cutback lanes in this game. Both backs did a good job of when there was penetration, and the rare times there was, because I think the offensive line's done a better and better job within this of run blocking throughout the course of this back half of the season. But when they had to get around those guys in the backfield, they were able to dip, turn, jump, cut past, and able to go find a hole, get the positive yards. Both of these guys running really well off of contact, falling forward, getting you into positions where you're going to be able to convert these third downs on the day. This has been one of the stifling parts of the Seattle Seahawks offense, is an inability to convert on third downs. And this is what makes these drives go nowhere fast. And this comes about in large part throughout the course of the season of them finding themselves too often those third and longs. Today, because you were finding that early down rushing success, and you were finding early first and second down success in general terms, getting yourself into those third down situations where now instead of being a 2 of 13 or 3 of 15, you're 9 of 16 in this game on third down. And that's why you were starting to find success in this back half, especially of this game. But Charbonnet was leading the way, running hard. A great run in this game where you had your 2 wide receivers, Cooper Kupp and Bobo, out on the edge, setting the edge, letting him get shot forward there for a nice big gain at that time. Able to take control of the line of scrimmage in this one. And that's despite they've got a couple of good players down there, the line of scrimmage to the Panthers. But a very good job of the offense in the rushing attack today, staying also consistent throughout the game. Not just getting hot at certain moments or busting out just the big runs, but then not the consistent stuff. There was the big runs, and then there was also the consistent stuff. The Seahawks special teams was their typical strong selves. Myers made both of his field goal attempts and all 3 extra point attempts. Dixon only had to punt twice, though he did boom a 53-yarder. That was nice, and you did do a good job of covering on kicks and punts in this game, so special teams remains a heavy strength of the Seattle Seahawks as they're going to move into the playoffs. A 17-point win on the road against a team that very well may win the NFC South when it's all said and done should be something that has every Seahawks fan plotting, especially now as they find themselves right on the threshold of getting over to the number 1 seed. And yet you are still going to hear from a lot of fans about the worry coming from this game, the worry that maybe Darnold is going to revert, or the worry that this offense is going to have enough consistency in the playoffs to go get it done. I would just point to those fans and that outlook and say, I understand where you're coming from. There were those moments in this game, and there have been those moments back half the schedule that offensively, I get it. It can be a little bit painful to watch. But this is also going to be playoff football a little bit when you look at playoff football. It's not the explosive offense of September. It is the drudgery of winter. It is the weather elements coming into play as they did so today. And you got to be able to win ugly. You got to have 3 phases of a football team on those kind of days to get it done. The weaknesses of your squad start to really get exposed. Now, could the turnovers be one of those weaknesses that somebody finds as our underbelly in the playoffs? Perhaps. We have a lot of other strengths on the other side of it, and that gives this team room for error. And though they do have those moments offensively where they can go so kaput for such a good amount of time, when the boom comes, it explodes. And it comes fast with the points. And we've seen that time and time again this season. As before this game, 30 points 4 times over in just a half alone. You hung 24 in the second half of this game. That's another part that also could very well carry over to these playoffs. 10 years ago, the Seattle Seahawks had to take down the big big-bad bully on the block in order to prove that they were truly ready. A San Francisco team at that time that had really had their number for a few years there, especially since Harbaugh had arrived, and you had thrown everything at him, and he just had all the answers to whatever you tossed. Well, then came the Penta-ultimate matchup between the two teams of the conference championship, a time where you were going to finally decide it out. Two men enter the arena, only one man may leave, and once again the Seattle Seahawks find themselves in a similar shape, and like that team that was able to prove their mettle and worth, and then not only prove that they could take down that bully, but that they could take down the greatest offense the regular season has ever seen in NFL history. Here again we find our Seahawks in the very same situation, traveling down there to San Francisco to go take on the old nemesis, and again a San Francisco team that has emerged as that bully, led by Shanahan in recent years with a couple of Super Bowl appearances, and a team that, like Harbaugh once before him, has had your number so many different times over. Can you turn those tables here now? We will see. But it is going to be an exciting matchup. It's going to be a hell of a build-up this week, and I cannot wait. I wish it was already here. We don't know where this team's going to land at in the finality of this season, but next week's going to show you a lot about what this team can do potentially in the playoffs. You go get this win, you go get that first round bye. It's all on the line right there. We've seen 3 times over that greased the wheels for a Super Bowl run. Why can't it once again? My name is Brandon Kane. This is the Hawks Nest. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe. But beyond all else, don't you ever forget, go Hawks.